They say when you catch your wife cheating, your whole world crashes down. Mine didn't crash. It sizzled. Like fries. See, I always thought if my marriage ended, it would be because of the usual things. Money problems, arguments about whose turn it was to do the dishes, or me forgetting that a fitted sheet can't just be balled up and shoved in the closet. But no. My marriage almost ended because of an air fryer. Yes, an air fryer. It started one Saturday morning, 7:42 a.m. I know the exact time because that's when I usually decide whether to keep sleeping or risk going downstairs to see if there are any leftover Pop-Tarts. I was half asleep when I heard whispering. "You're amazing. Don't stop." My eyes snapped open. My first thought, she's on the phone with another man. My second thought, wait, she doesn't even whisper that to me. Should I be offended? My third thought, don't move. Play dead. Like a possum. Figure out who the enemy is first. I cracked my eyes open just enough to see. And that's when I saw her. My wife, sitting on the edge of the bed, cradling my air fryer. Like a newborn. I shot upright. What the actual hell is going on? She jumped like I'd caught her with her high school crush instead of a $79 appliance from Walmart. "Oh my God, I can explain," she yelped. "Explain," I croaked, pointing at the hunk of metal in her lap. "Explain why you're whispering sweet nothings to a glorified easy-bake oven with self-esteem issues?" The air fryer dinged. It dinged. Like it was in on the joke. Like it was mocking me. By breakfast, we'd moved the drama to the kitchen. I sat at the table, holding the fryer in my arms like a baby I wasn't sure I wanted custody of. I rocked it gently, glaring at her. She paced like a woman caught between two lovers on a telenovela. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she blurted. "Don't you dare," I said, jabbing a finger in the air. "Don't you dare feed me the 'it just happened' line. You don't just accidentally fall in love with an appliance." She threw up her hands. It makes me crispy fries when you don't." My jaw dropped. "So I lost you to a gadget from Walmart?" She crossed her arms. "It listens. It cares. And it preheats in 3 minutes." The fryer dinged again. Smugly. Like it had just winked at me. I turned to the invisible audience, the one I always imagine is watching my life like it's a bad sitcom. Imagine being dumped for a clearance rack model with a plug. And not even a good one. We couldn't even afford the Ninja Deluxe. Nope. She left me for Chad. Yes, I had named it Chad. Why? Because of course my wife's lover would be named Chad. By afternoon, the war was officially on. The air fryer sat on the coffee table, humming smugly, while my wife perched next to it, scrolling recipes like a teenager planning prom with her crush. I stood in the doorway, arms folded, staring down my metallic rival. "You think you can steal my wife, huh?" I demanded. The fryer dinged. My wife gasped, clutching her chest. "Oh my God, it made nuggets." I threw my hands up in surrender. And that's the moment I realized. I can't compete with 400 degrees of unconditional love. But here's the thing, this was just the beginning. Because in that moment, while my wife popped golden nuggets into her mouth like love letters, while Chad the fryer purred smugly on the table, I made a vow. I would not be beaten. Not by another man. And definitely not by a kitchen appliance. Okay? When people say marriage is hard, they don't usually mean because your wife is in love with a kitchen appliance. But that was my life now. By the next morning, I'd already started plotting ways to win her back. My first brilliant idea? Make breakfast before she could. I'd show her I didn't need Chad. I could be crispy and dependable too. So I rolled up my sleeves, cracked a couple eggs into the frying pan, and watched as the entire thing instantly blackened like I'd sacrificed it to the god of overcooked omelets. The smoke alarm went off. My wife came running in, clutching Chad like he was her newborn. She took one look at the charred egg brick in the pan and shook her head. He would never do this to me. I choked, waving smoke out of my eyes. "You're giving it pronouns now?" The fryer dinged, smug as ever. By noon, I'd had enough. I needed reinforcements. So I called my best friend, Trevor. Trevor is the kind of guy who thinks every problem in life can be solved with either duct tape or tequila. Preferably both. He showed up at my door with a six-pack under his arm and a grin on his face. "You sounded desperate. What happened?" Did she finally find your browser history? I dragged him inside and pointed to the coffee table. That's what happened. Trevor squinted. You lost her to a toaster? Air fryer? I corrected, dead serious. Big difference. The fryer dinged. Trevor raised his eyebrows. Bro, is it flirting with me? We sat down at the table. 3 men, me, Trevor, and Chad the fryer. Yes, I said 3 men. Because at this point, Chad had a bigger presence in the room than I did. Trevor cracked open a beer. Okay, so what's the plan? You can't just let a hunk of aluminum win. You gotta outshine him. I leaned in. How? Simple. You cook something better than Chad ever could. Show her you're the real deal. I groaned. Trevor, I once set microwave popcorn on fire. Popcorn. It literally tells you what to do on the bag. Details. He waved me off. We'll do a cook-off. You versus him. Man versus machine. Winner takes the girl. I glanced at the fryer. It dinged. Again. Smug. Always smug. Trevor leaned closer, whispering like it was a battle plan. First rule of war. Know your enemy. Chad's quick, efficient, reliable. You're clumsy, under-seasoned, a walking kitchen fire hazard. Exactly. So we lean into that. I blinked. Lean into being terrible? He grinned. Buddy, if you can't beat him, you make her realize she doesn't want him. Nobody wants a perfect man. They want a disaster they can laugh at. For a brief moment, I thought Trevor was a genius. Then he tried to microwave his beer to make it extra bubbly. That night, I put my plan into action. Step 1, cook something edible. Step 2, don't burn down the kitchen. Step 3, win back my wife's heart. I stood in the kitchen, apron on, spatula in hand, muttering pep talks to myself. You got this. You're smarter than a fryer. You've been to college. You pay taxes. The fryer dinged. I froze. My wife entered the kitchen, beaming, holding up a basket of golden brown fries. Look what Chad made me, she squealed. I stared down at my pan of grayish chicken mush. Game over. For now. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was war. And I'd be damned if I let a kitchen appliance steal my wife without a fight. You know your marriage is in trouble when your wife suggests couples therapy. You know your marriage is really in trouble when she insists on bringing the air fryer. I just feel like Chad should be part of the conversation, she said, cradling it in the passenger seat on the way there. I gripped the steering wheel. He doesn't even have ears. She patted the fryer. Don't listen to him, baby. The fryer dinged. I almost swerved into oncoming traffic. Our therapist, Dr. Green, had seen a lot in his career. Affairs, screaming matches, tears, people who thought roleplay meant pretending to be a different accountant. But I could tell, even for him, this was new. So he began carefully, pen poised. You brought a third party into the relationship. Yes, my wife said brightly. Chad makes me feel seen. Dr. Green nodded thoughtfully, like this was completely normal. And you, he asked, turning to me. I stared at the fryer. I'm competing with a box that runs on 120 volts. The fryer dinged. My wife gasped. He doesn't like being called that. I threw up my hands. Oh, I'm sorry. Does Chad have feelings now? Maybe next week he'll want to vote. We sat there in awkward silence, the 3 of us, while Dr. Green scribbled notes. Okay, he said finally. Let's try a communication exercise. Husband, tell your wife what you feel when she chooses Chad over you. I inhaled deeply. I feel betrayed. I feel neglected. I feel like I'm being cucked by a kitchen appliance. The fryer dinged again. Dr. Green looked impressed. It seems responsive. I barked. It makes frozen nuggets. It doesn't have a soul. My wife gasped, clutching it tighter. Don't listen to him, Chad. You're more man than he'll ever be. Dr. Green scribbled furiously. Interesting. The attachment is very strong. Attachment? I shouted. She's basically in an emotional affair with a countertop robot. Not just emotional, she muttered under her breath. My jaw dropped. Excuse me? She blinked innocently. I mean, he makes mozzarella sticks too. The session ended when Chad literally beeped mid-conversation and Dr. Green, I kid you not, reached into the basket and pulled out a nugget. Delicious, he said. I nearly passed out. My therapist was eating my rival's nuggets. On my dime. On the way home, my wife hummed happily, stroking Chad's handle. Meanwhile, I plotted. Because if therapy was taking his side, it was time for me to fight dirty. Jealousy is an ugly thing. And apparently, I was about to become the ugliest man alive. After therapy, things got worse. My wife and Chad were inseparable. She posted Instagram stories like, self-care equals fries plus love 2 hearts French fries. I'd be tagged in the background, scowling like a widowed husband at a friar funeral. I started noticing things. Little things. Like how she smiled at Chad more than she smiled at me. How she wiped his handle with more care than she patted me on the shoulder. How she whispered, "You're so hot," while waiting for it to preheat. That one almost broke me. The paranoia grew. I started side-eyeing every appliance in the kitchen. The blender. Plotting against me. The toaster. A silent accomplice. The fridge. Probably jealous it wasn't getting enough attention. One night, I walked into the kitchen and found my wife whispering in the dark. I flicked on the light. "What are you doing?" She froze, mid-cuddle with Chad. "Oh, nothing. Nothing. Nothing." I stormed forward. "You're spooning an air fryer at midnight. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you're having an affair with a convection oven," she gasped. "How dare you? He's more than that, he's family." The fryer dinged. I swear it was smirking at me. That's when I snapped. While she slept, I crept into the living room like a thief in my own house. Chad sat on the coffee table, gleaming in the moonlight. "It's you or me, buddy," I whispered. I reached for the plug. But the second my fingers touched the cord, bzzzt, a spark shot out, zapping me. I screamed, stumbled backward, and smacked my shin on the coffee table. The fryer dinged. Mocking, taunting, laughing. My wife burst into the room, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" I clutched my shin. He attacked me. She scooped Chad into her arms like I tried to strangle a puppy. "How could you? He would never hurt you." "He bit me," I shouted. "Look, burn mark." "He tried to electrocute me." She glared. "Maybe you shouldn't have tried to unplug him without consent." Consent. For an appliance. I stared at her, then at the fryer. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just jealous. I was losing. So I made a decision. If I couldn't sabotage Chad, I'd have to outshine him. Which meant only one thing. Cooking lessons. If you had told me 6 months ago that I'd be in a fluorescent-lit classroom at the community center, surrounded by retirees and divorcees, holding a spatula like it was a loaded weapon, I'd have laughed. But here I was, taking cooking lessons. Because my competition was an air fryer named Chad. The instructor, Chef Lorenzo, was a short Italian man with the energy of 3 espressos and the patience of a saint who'd just been cut off in traffic. "Cooking is a love," he declared, slamming down a pot. "If you don't put love in, you make a sadness." I nodded aggressively, as if he was unveiling the secret to life itself. Meanwhile, the woman next to me, a 70-year-old named Marlene, was already flambeing something like she was auditioning for Hell's Kitchen, nursing home edition. My first assignment was simple, fry egg. But simple is a lie. I cracked the egg too hard, splat. Half of it slid down the counter, the other half landed on my shoe. Chef Lorenzo shouted, "That is not a love, that is violence." Round 2, I cracked softer, too soft. The egg just sat there, mocking me, refusing to break. I tapped harder. It exploded in my hand. Marlene leaned over and whispered, "Honey, maybe your wife's right to stick with the fryer." By the time we reached pasta making, my apron looked like a Jackson Pollock painting. My dough stuck to the ceiling. My sauce tasted like regret. Chef Lorenzo took one bite, spat it into a trash can, and crossed himself. "This pasta, it makes me question God." I went home defeated. My wife was in the living room, cuddled up with Chad. She popped a perfectly golden mozzarella stick into her mouth. Isn't he amazing?" I slammed my Tupperware container down. "I made this." She opened it, peeked inside, and recoiled. "Is it supposed to smell like pennies?" "It's pasta." I snapped. With love, Chad dinged. She gasped. Oh my God, he made onion rings. I watched her choose onion rings over my pasta like it was The Bachelor, and I'd just been voted off. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I could still hear the fryer humming softly in the other room, mocking me, taunting me. That's when I whispered to myself, this isn't over, Chad. Tomorrow, we cook again. It started small. I was sick of losing, sick of the late-night nuggets, sick of hearing my wife whisper, you're so hot, to 400 degrees Fahrenheit instead of me. So I made an announcement. In the middle of dinner. Over takeout Chinese, because yes, even I had given up cooking that week. I stood, chopsticks raised like a sword. Tomorrow night, I declared, I challenged Chad to a cook-off. My wife gasped. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious, I said. This kitchen ain't big enough for the both of us. The words spread fast. Too fast. By the next evening, our living room looked like the set of Iron Chef, Divorce Edition. My wife had invited her friends. Marlene from cooking class somehow showed up with a wine cooler and lawn chair. Even the PE teacher from down the block was there, holding a whistle like a referee. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, he bellowed, to the culinary death match of the century. In this corner, the reigning champion, Chad the air fryer. And in this corner, Dave, a man who once burned water. Everyone cheered. Except me. The battle began. I went classic, spaghetti. Homemade. With sauce I slaved over like Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel, except with more swearing. Chad popped out perfect mozzarella sticks like he'd been practicing all his life. Crunchy, golden, sinful. My wife moaned after the first bite. I almost threw the pan at the wall. But then, my redemption. I plated my pasta, sprinkled it with Parmesan, added basil for flair. The crowd leaned in. Marlene took a bite. She paused. She chewed. She looked at me and shrugged. It's edible. The crowd gasped. Edible. From Dave, someone shouted. Cheers erupted. I felt 10 feet tall. Then Chad dinged. My wife lifted the basket and gasped dramatically, like someone just proposed. Out came golden fried donuts. Powdered sugar. Steam. They smelled like heaven and betrayal. Everyone rushed forward. Donuts vanished. Powdered sugar coated the room. Even Marlene licked her fingers like she'd found religion. No one touched my pasta again. I stood there, sauce-stained and broken. The PE teacher blew his whistle. Winner. Chad. The crowd cheered. My wife hugged him like he just returned from war. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just fighting an appliance. I was fighting destiny. You know how some couples fight over pets during a breakup? Well, I never thought I'd be in a courtroom fighting over custody of an air fryer. But there I was. It all started the morning after the cook-off. My wife announced, as casually as someone saying, we're out of milk. I'm taking Chad to my mother's for the weekend. Excuse me? Taking who? I stood in the doorway like a man being evicted from his own life. You can't just take him. He's mine, she snapped. You don't even appreciate him. That's how he ended up in court. In Karumte. The judge, a weary man who looked like he regretted law school, stared down at us. Let me get this straight. You two are fighting over an air fryer. My wife nodded. He completes me. I jumped up. Your Honor, he's a manipulative little toaster with delusions of grandeur. The judge rubbed his temples. God, give me strength. My lawyer, who I'd hired off Craigslist for $50 and a Subway gift card, tried to help. Your Honor, my client has a strong bond with this fryer. He once burned his shin trying to unplug it. Electrocution trauma, Your Honor. I added dramatically, pulling up my pant leg to reveal a faint red mark that looked suspiciously like a mosquito bite. My wife gasped. That's a lie. Chad would never hurt him. Objection. I screamed. To what? Asked the judge. I don't know. I just always wanted to say that. The court devolved into chaos. Marlene stood up from the back row, holding a tray. Your Honor, if I may. Chad made these jalapeno poppers for us this morning. The judge tried one. He moaned. Sweet baby Jesus. My lawyer threw his papers in air. We're screwed. Finally, the judge banged his gavel. Enough. After careful consideration, I hereby award full custody of the fryer to the wife. Gasps fill the room. I drop to my knees. No, not Chad. The fryer dinged. My wife smiled. Everyone applauded. Everyone except me. That night, I sat alone in the empty kitchen, staring at the cold, silent counter where Chad once lived. I whispered, "I'll get you back. One way or another." And I meant it. I had lost everything. The cook-off, the custody battle, even my dignity, somewhere between my shin burn and the courtroom jalapeno poppers. But one thing I had lost, hope, and maybe half my sanity. The plan was simple, or at least stupidly ambitious. Step 1, win my wife back. Step 2, defeat Chad once and for all. Step 3, retire as the man who finally outcooked a glorified space heater. I started training like Rocky, preparing for his final fight. At dawn, I ran up the steps of City Hall with a frying pan in hand. At night, I cracked eggs in slow motion to Eye of the Tiger. I burned pancakes, soufflés, and an entire lasagna, but each disaster made me stronger. Even Marlene joined in. She'd bark orders at me like a drill sergeant. "Whisk harder, maggot. You call that a bechamel?" By the end of 2 weeks, my kitchen looked like a war zone, but I could cook. Then came the ultimate showdown, our wedding anniversary dinner. I set the table with candles, roses, even real cloth napkins, not the paper ones with cartoon minions on them. My wife sat down, suspicious but curious. Chad hummed smugly on the counter, like he knew he had this in the bag. I served course 1, bruschetta. Crunchy bread, juicy tomatoes, fresh basil. She took a bite. Her eyes widened. "This is good." Course 2, steak. Perfectly seared. Juicy. Seasoned with confidence. She gasped. "Oh my God, this is better than Chad." The fryer dinged. Like a jealous ex. But I ignored him. Finally, dessert. Creme brulee. I torched the sugar top dramatically, sparks flying like fireworks. She clapped. Actually clapped. Then came the big moment. I leaned across the table, took her hand, and said, "I know I've been jealous. I know Chad gives you crispy fries, but I give you love and medium-rare steak. So, what do you say? Can we start fresh?" She looked at me, at the food, at Chad. The fryer dinged one last desperate time. She stood, walked over, and unplugged him. Silence. I swear I saw his little power light flicker, like the last breath of a defeated villain. She turned back to me, smiling. "I choose you." I cheered inside like I just won the Super Bowl. That night, for the first time in months, we went to bed without the hum of an air fryer in the background. And as I drifted off to sleep, one thought echoed in my head. I had finally beaten Chad, at least until she discovers the Instant Pot. Life was normal again. No more therapy sessions about appliance intimacy. No more courtroom battles over stainless steel custody. And most importantly, no more fryer dings in the middle of the night. Instead, my wife and I were cooking together. She'd chop veggies, I'd sear meat, and occasionally we'd set off the smoke alarm. Teamwork, romance, progress. But happiness is never permanent. One Saturday morning, I walked into the kitchen to find a large Amazon box on the counter. My wife beamed. "Guess what came today?" she chirped. I froze. My heart sank. Slowly, I tore the tape open. Inside was a shiny new Instant Pot. I stared at it. It stared back, silent, looming, threatening. Finally, I whispered under my breath, "Round 2.